Hello YouTube, how's it going? What is up? So, I am here to review the Fantastic Four First Steps. This is the long-awaited MCU Fantastic Four movie. It's finally here. And so, did Marvel finally make a good Fantastic Four film? Or is this fourth reboot of the characters just as flawed as previous attempts? That's what I'm here to let you guys know. And I'm going to let y'all know right off the bat, for me personally, this did not work. The main reason is honestly the Fantastic Four themselves. They're written very poorly in this movie, in my opinion. And you couple that with them barely using their powers, along with like overall how their portrayals of the characters are, and this movie just left me cold. And so let's go ahead and get into that and talk about that. We're going to start, much like Superman, we're going to talk about characters individually here, the main characters anyway. And then I'm going to get into comparing it to Superman, because I'm already seeing that online. People are already comparing these two movies, probably because they're two superhero movies and they're coming out just weeks apart from one another. And from the marketing, they seem like they're very similar movies, but they're very different in a lot of ways, and I'll get into that in a moment. And then I'm going to talk about what I liked, and then I'll give my conclusive thoughts about this movie, as well as like my overall feelings about the MCU as a whole after that. So anyway, let's start with my boy Reed Richards. So let's go ahead and start. I'll go ahead and say this. I like Pedro Pascal a lot. I think he's a great actor, but he's just woefully miscast as Reed here. He just seems lost. He's just walking around. He just looks lost, and he plays Reed as like very meek and very reserved. At times, it seems like he's almost afraid to speak. Like he's just afraid that people are gonna look at him funny or something like that. It's really odd. He also just doesn't do anything in the movie. He's constantly incorrect about what's going on. Like never is right about anything. His plans always go wrong. And he also doesn't get to do anything with his powers in the film. Literally, you've seen what he gets to do in the movie in the trailers. He stretches and grabs things, and that's it. He doesn't do anything fun. He doesn't do anything that like Elastigirl was seen doing in the Incredibles movie. Heck, he doesn't even do anything that Reed has done in like previous Fantastic Four movies. He just doesn't get to do anything fun with his powers at all. And I think it's the MCU and Marvel as a whole, they just seem afraid of stretch powers for some reason. I think they're like, oh well, this stuff is silly. Let it be silly. Have it, like, I don't care if it looks unrealistic or if it looks silly. Like, it's a guy who stretches. That's gonna look silly. Have him turn into a ball. Have him, stretch his arms super long. Have him do, like, weird, crazy straw stuff with his body. Do this. I don't care how weird it looks. Just do it. And if I was James Gunn, man, I'd be like, all right, now's our time to make Plastic Man. Because between this and them changing Miss Marvel's powers in the Miss Marvel TV show and the Marvels, I gotta say, they've left DC wide open to do a Plastic Man movie and do it, like, the right way and let just, like, Reed should be doing Looney Tunes stuff. I don't understand why he's not. It's so weird. I hate it. Next up, we got Sue Storm. Once again, I love Vanessa Kirby. I think she's a great actress, and I actually think she was good casting as Sue Storm. Problem is here, she's really bland, and her Sue is written as like very cold. She comes across detached from everyone. As a matter of fact, I think her personality in this movie is closer to what Reed's is in the comics, except she doesn't have like the deep love for science that Reed does, to where it's like pretty much problematic for Reed in the comics. Reed Richard does love science, but it's more in like a gee whiz, isn't science fun type of way, rather than like he kind of gets a little megalomaniacal a little bit with it in the comics sometimes. Like I said, sometimes it seems like Reed loves science more than anything else in the comics. So back to Sue though, she does get a moment with her powers. There's times when she turns things invisible, and that's cool. But at the end of the day, it's really underwhelming. When it comes to her force field stuff, all she's really asked to do is push stuff. She just pushes things. And at one point in the movie, she does push something that's very big, but it's like it feels underwhelming still, because she doesn't do any force fields. She doesn't make any platforms for herself. She doesn't make any little discs that she can throw. She does nothing with her force field powers other than, push something. Matter of fact, I'll be real with you. I think Jessica Alba in the first two Fantastic Four movies does a lot more fun stuff with her powers, both the invisibility and the force field stuff, than Sue Storm ever does in this movie. It's bizarre. I just do not understand it at all. And now moving on from Sue, we're gonna go to her brother, uh, Johnny Storm, played by Joseph Quinn here, who once again I think was a very good choice for Johnny. I really do. I saw some people saying like Joseph Quinn's a weird choice for Johnny, but I got it. I understood where they were going immediately. But I have to say, I actually think he gives the worst performance in the movie for me. His quips do land, but he feels like he's acting. It doesn't feel like he's in this movie, like he's in it. It feels like he's just looking at a green, like for example, when he's looking at characters who are CGI, like Silver Surfer or The Thing or Galactus, it feels like he's looking at a green screen and not like a character. And that just takes me out of the movie. There's not a single real feeling behind this man's eyes other than just like, hey, I'm looking at a special effect. Isn't that special effect cool? It feels like he's an actor in a movie. And I should never feel that way when I'm watching someone in a movie. There's not a single emotional beat that hits that he has. And that's because Quinn just does not seem invested in anything that's going on. But I will say this, unlike the others, he does get to use his powers. But again, they're underwhelming, and at times the CGI is very dodgy, especially in close-ups. I do like the way he looks when he's powered on, but in close-ups, man, it really breaks apart. And, and I will say there is a moment at the beginning where he gets to use his powers in a really cool way. But once again, most of the time he's just flying and like throwing a fireball or just on fire in general, and it's just kind of lame. And, I think if Quinn gets paired with a better director and a more experienced director in the next movie, I think he'll be a fantastic Johnny Storm. I just really, this is directed by Matt Shackman. He's, done TV pretty much a lot before this, and that really shows, in my opinion. I don't think he's a bad filmmaker per se, but he definitely was not ready to take on something of this magnitude. And with Joseph Quinn's performance in this, it really stands out that he wasn't ready for something like this. Moving on to The Thing, who's my boy. I love The Thing. It's clobbering time, all that good stuff. Love that. Love him. And when I saw that Ebon Moss-Bachrach was getting cast as The Thing, I was like, hey, that's an interesting choice. This could be really cool. But unfortunately, he is also miscast as The Thing. He's extremely quiet and just flat right dull in this movie. He doesn't have much of a personality at all. And also, unfortunately, Ben Grimm himself doesn't get anything to do in this movie. He gets like a cooking scene, but why? It's literally just to remind the audience that, hey, you like Cousin from the Bear, right? Well, he's playing The Thing. Isn't that fun? He's cooking, right? Just like Cousin. And that's dumb. It doesn't give any insight into Ben as a character. Doesn't develop him in any way. It's a waste of time. It's like, what are you doing, man? And on top of that, once again, he barely uses his powers. Out of the four, I would say he uses his powers the least. He gets to throw something, and that's about it. They also give him a romantic love interest in Natasha Lyonne, who's just a big ball of nothing. They just talk a couple of times, and it goes nowhere. And as a matter of fact, they have 3 scenes. One where they talk to each other in their first meeting. The second scene, they're just looking at each other. And the third scene, he's like, hey, what's up? Just thought I'd come visit you. And she's like, oh, that's nice. It's silly. And it doesn't do anything towards the character. It doesn't do anything with the story. It should have been cut. They cut Jonathan Malkovich from this movie. They could have cut this instead, honestly. I don't understand why it's even here. Also, his CGI is pretty inconsistent. I think at times he does look really, really good, almost photorealistic. But then in the next shot, he just looks awful. And I really wish they did a blend of practical and CGI effects. And maybe they did, and maybe that's in those shots where they used a blend of practical and CGI effects. He looks really good. But whenever it's just regular CGI, it looks really bad. I will be honest, I went to go see this at the fan event, and it was in IMAX and everything. I was very excited because I'm a huge Fantastic Four fan. And they played the Avatar 3 trailer in front of this, and I gotta say, that actually ended up doing this movie a disservice, because Avatar 3 looks so freaking good. It looks incredible visually, that it just makes this movie look bland in comparison. So, it is what it is. Next up, we got Galactus, who I love Galactus as well. Super cool character, and he is very cool in this movie, and he seems extremely menacing, at least at first. And once again, Ralph Ineson, he's actually very much perfect casting for Galactus. Extremely great job voicing Galactus. His voice is booming. It sounded great on those IMAX speakers. And plus, they kind of make Galactus look like Ralph Ineson a little bit, except he's got that big helmet on, which I loved. I love that they embraced the goofy look that Galactus has, but he still came off as very menacing for a while, which I like. And I also really like how big they made him in the movie. He's huge, and yeah, he is able to shrink down, it seems like, as well, and make himself bigger if he needs to. Very cool stuff. I just wish we got to see more of him. And by the time we get to the big climax and involving him, that's where it actually he starts to feel silly. And, you know, they defeat him way too easily. You know, I guess spoiler alert, they defeat Galactus, but, you know, is that really a spoiler? And, you know, it just seemed really lame. And will we ever see Galactus again? I doubt it. The MCU just doesn't seem to care about continuing threads anymore, especially after hearing what Kevin Feige had to say in a recent interview. I don't know if they know what they're doing anymore, to be honest. So we'll see, though. I hope we get to see Galactus again, but I'm not holding my breath for it. Next up, we actually have my personal favorite part of the movie, which is the Silver Surfer, played by Julia Gardner, who, my goodness gracious, she doesn't have a lot of screen time, but boy, oh boy, does she command that screen whenever she's on it, dude. She is so cool. She doesn't have a lot of screen time, like I said, but let me tell you, this character and what she does with it in this is the definition of there's no such thing as small parts, only small actors, because she freaking winds up for that pitch, and boy, does she knock it out of the daggum park. It is awesome. Also, she has the best, along with pretty much the only, action scene in the film. It's not, you know, like it's very cool visually. It's in space. It's a chase sequence. They're in the ship. Funny enough, this movie has like 2 action sequences, and one of them involves the Fantastic Four in a spaceship that's more closer to like something in Star Wars, and they don't get to use their powers at all. And I thought that was really odd. As much as I like the sequence a lot, I was like, how come there's not more sequences that you planned for them to showcase their abilities? It's very bizarre. But I did like that action scene a lot, and it involved the Silver Surfer quite a bit, and she was amazing. She also gets like the most characterization in this movie. It's not much, but they at least show you why she is the way she is in this movie. But I would say it's good characterization, and that has to do mainly with just Julia Gardner's performance and how she carries herself and everything. I thought this was awesome. Her CGI is the most consistent in the movie. I think I do want to say I think the CGI in this movie is good for the most part. Certainly better than some of the Marvel movies we've been getting, but it still has its moments where it's you know, I can see right through it. I'm like, that's an effect, you know, and that's a little bit too bad. I do think that they should have blended live action with mocap, very much similar to what they did when Rise of the Silver Surfer came out back in 2007, because that stuff still looks really, really great. And once again, I really hope that we get to see her again. I really do, but I doubt it. So as a matter of fact, watching this movie, I was like, you know, if they could just continue without using the Fantastic Four at all, I think they would. Funny enough, I think that's bizarre. So this movie's just a mess, man. I don't know. I didn't like it very much. Anyway, let's move on to the next beat. Okay, so I want to go ahead and talk about the Superman comparison. I saw a lot of people comparing these movies even before they were out. They're only 2 weeks apart. This was bound to happen, okay? But besides both films attempting to recapture that gee-whiz nature of their source material, along with hitting the ground running instead of redoing their origin stories, I don't really think these two films actually have that much in common, besides being superhero movies that are releasing a few weeks apart. However, I think everything in Superman is far better and much more accomplished than in Fantastic Four. I think the world building is more fleshed out in Superman. The world feels lived in. It takes time to characterize the central characters. It hits the ground running, but it never leaves you behind. Whereas Fantastic Four, you constantly feel like you just missed something and you're trying to catch up with it. It has better cinematography, it has better CGI, and it has much more action. It also actually has Superman using his god-dang powers. Unlike the Fantastic Four, in their own movie, they barely use their powers. Matter of fact, Silver Surfer showcases their abilities far more than the Fantastic Four. It is crazy to me. Like, it felt more like a Silver Surfer movie in that regard. I could not believe what I was watching. Most importantly, though, Superman actually feels like a real cinematic experience rather than another cog in an endless capitalist machine. And yeah, in spite of the Fantastic Four being detached from the main MCU, it still feels like a cog rather than its own entity. It feels like a movie that is just checking the box of having a Marvel movie out for the summer, rather than having any merit on its own and being about anything. This movie is simply about nothing other than the Fantastic Four fighting Galactus. Its only function is to continue the monolith of the MCU. And I don't know about you, but I want more from my movies than that. I don't care if they're big budget movies or what. Be about something more than just, oh, we're fighting a big purple guy. I just need more than that. And, it's just very frustrating. I find this movie very, very frustrating. I'll get into that at the end of the review, but let's talk about some stuff that I did like. Did I like anything from this movie? Well, I did, actually. The score on this is fantastic. Michael Giacchino has really popped off here. I think he's always good, but he really, really seems to go off whenever there's space involved. Like, this score is just as good, in my opinion, as what he did with a movie like Jupiter Ascending and also The Batman. I don't think it's as iconic as The Batman, but it's definitely really, really great. It really elevates the movie in a big bad way. And I can actually see myself listening to it on its own, just like I do with Jupiter Ascending and The Batman. I don't see myself rewatching the Fantastic Four anytime soon, but I will be listening to the score on its own for sure, especially when we're streaming and stuff. And as I said earlier, I loved Silver Surfer and I loved Galactus. I just wish we got to see more of them. And speaking of more, they do a very quick montage at the beginning, showcasing what the Fantastic Four have done here. And there's a lot of Easter eggs here. They reference some old comic book covers and stuff. And it's super cool, but it's way too brief. It should have been extended. As a matter of fact, I would have taken one of those moments, probably when they fight Red Ghost, in that it's a very brief, like they fight the super apes. But I would have actually taken that, and I would have had that be the opening 20 minutes of the movie, them fighting one of their rogue gallery to establish who these Fantastic Four characters, who this Fantastic Four is, because I love the Fantastic Four, know a lot about them as characters. We've had 3 movies with them already, but this movie never gives you a reason to care about this version of the Fantastic Four because you don't get to know who they are as people. And I think like they could have had a really cool sequence at the beginning, like the first 20 minutes, just to establish them as a team and as characters and as people and have them showcase their powers and their abilities and what each one brings to the team. And they don't do that. It kind of reminds me of like The Incredibles, right? Both Incredibles movies smartly have opening scenes that set up like what needs to be set up for the movie. The first Incredibles movie, it has that, it showcases like the glory days briefly, right? And that way you can have that juxtaposition between what it was like and then what it is for them now. And it does a great job of characterizing, the central characters of Mr. Incredible, Elastigirl, as well as Frozone to a degree as well. And it also characterizes the villain very well. This movie, however, really needed something like that. And just like Incredibles 2 has that sequence with the Underminer. They could have had them fight, they could have had the Fantastic Four fight Mole Man at the beginning of this. I just needed a reason to care about this Fantastic Four as a group of people and a team. There's also, like I said earlier, there's a great action sequence in space where they're being chased by the Silver Surfer, and the movie really needed more moments like this. Man, the climax of this movie is so underwhelming. It just had nothing. And I also say that it needed more character moments, and I agree with that as well. There are moments where the characters are interacting with each other, but it just feels so dull and lifeless and bland, mainly because none of this cast seems interested in this movie at all. Like, they seem so detached from the material, it's very odd. I think Pedro Pascal is the most invested in it, but unfortunately, I just think his performance as Reed, his take on Reed, is not very good. And we'll see how that continues to grow outside of other, outside of this movie and in the wider MCU as a whole. I also really did love the set design. I think this retro future 60s aesthetic is super cool. However, it feels super hollow. It's much more closer to a dollhouse than a living, breathing world. Superman felt like a living, breathing world where you could like just show up and you're like, oh, I can live here. This feels like, I would go and open up the refrigerator and there wouldn't be any food in there, So I just think it's cool, but it's not, it's not detailed. And so let me get into my conclusion here, where I gotta say, overall, this is just a bad movie. Unfortunately, this is the 4th outing for the Fantastic Four as a team. This is the 4th reboot. One movie didn't even get released back in the 90s, although I gotta say, funny enough, I still think that might be the best Fantastic Four movie. Certainly has the most comic accurate costumes. They still haven't gotten this right. I like the Jessica Alba Fantastic Four movies with Chris Evans and all them. Michael Chiklis as the Thing is still the best version of the Thing, funny enough. But those movies, they're hit and miss for me. You know, I think the first one's way better than the second one. I still have moments of the second one that I like, but I think those two movies do a much better job characterizing the Fantastic Four as people and as a team than this movie does. You know, in my out of theater reaction, I said this is a good movie that I don't like very much. But now that I'm here and I'm recording this and I've thought about this and everything and I did my notes, I gotta say I disagree with myself. I think it's just a bad movie. And it's far too rushed. The cast seems disinterested. There's not enough characterization for any of the main cast. There isn't enough action. The Fantastic Four barely use their powers. The CGI is too inconsistent. And it never once made me care about anything that was happening on screen. And I may have had mixed feelings on Thunderbolts and everything, but Fantastic Four makes that movie look great in comparison. And to be honest with you, after this, paired with Kevin Feige's interview where he's talking about all this stuff that the MCU is doing with like baby X-Men, not baby, but very young X-Men, and like, you know, doing a reset after Secret Wars, which I knew that was probably going to happen to some extent, but I think they're going to do more than what we even expected. I'm just not really anticipating, I'm no longer anticipating anything that Marvel does. And it's clear to me that they're running on empty here, and instead of making a much needed stop to refuel the way that DC did, they're just getting out and they're trying to push the car uphill, and it ain't working. So anyway, guys, that's my review for Fantastic Four, The First Steps. I'm going to have to give this movie 2 stars out of 5. I would give it 1, but I got to be real with you, Silver Surfer's awesome in this, and the score is amazing. So anyway, guys, like I said, that's my review for Fantastic Four. Make sure you like and subscribe so you can see more videos. My next movie review will be for Eddington. I'm seeing that tonight. And then when I get home tonight, I'm going to start up the live stream. We're going to play Who's at the Door. I think that looks like a really good game. We might play some other stuff as well. That'll be up. I'll start streaming probably closer to midnight Central Time tonight because I think I'll get home pretty late from Eddington. You know, that's what I got going on. I'll also have a review for Happy Gilmore 2 at some point as well. So anyway, guys, hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.